to this training. My name is Stephanie. I am your veteran special education teacher and resident IEP coach, and I'm so excited to be here with Lydia today. We're going to be talking all about training up or training out your paraprofessionals, what all of that means, and everything in between. But before we do that, again, my name is Stephanie. I'm from Mrs. D's Corner and the Intentional IEP. Lydia, will you please share about you, your teaching experience, and kind of your online space stuff as well?
Sure. I'm Lydia Heeneyhawk. I am at the Exceptional Space. I built that community online because I had student interns that actually were studying abroad, and there wasn't a very good way to get communication with them. And then it kind of exploded into this even bigger community. So really excited to share, and it's so much fun to find other collaborators because we're outside of our classroom walls and there are better ideas just outside of your own room. So it's been pretty neat to see the virtual world of teaching really come alive.
I am so excited. Lydia and I did a previous training that's inside the Intentional IEP membership, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, all about having your paraprofessionals in the gen ed classroom. And she was talking about training them up or training them out. And I was like, I need to learn more about this. We need to do a training on this because I feel like this is something that a lot of teachers need help with. It is something that I get asked questions about a lot is how do you train your paras? What do you train them to do? What does that look like? So we're going to kind of talk about that. And also talk about, I guess, when paras necessarily aren't a great fit for your classroom or for a student, how you can train them out. And I do air quotes because I'm sure there's a whole explanation to what out is, and it's not so, I don't want to say harsh, but you know what I mean. Well, so let's talk about that. What does it mean to train up or train out?
So I think being a supervisor, I think, is probably the biggest challenge I have as a teacher. We went through college, we learned how to teach kids skills, academics, but then you step into your first classroom and you're like, okay, I have all these adults. They expect me to know the answers to all these things. Some of them are older, could be my mom, could be my dad. Some
Yeah.
of them are younger than I am. So you have this huge range of experience, personalities, and you're expected to supervise them whether you're ready or not. So training them up or training them out, it's really easy to have very good and powerful paraprofessionals. Those ones that you have hired, you can lean on them for everything that you need. They help you prep. They give you good collaboration. They just are people who are your people who you can give stuff to, and everything's going to be taken care of. But you also have a handful of paras that may not have all that experience. You may have people that come in thinking that that's what they want to do is to support students when they have absolutely no idea how demanding and really what the job entails. So oftentimes those are the people that, will experience a career change sooner than later. And they probably aren't your person that's going to be with you throughout your whole years as a teacher. So how do you train the ones that you really want to stay? How do you train them up? How do you train them so they want to come back? How do you make them feel validated? And then on the flip side, how do you train those people out? How do you do it in a respectful manner that doesn't cause your space to have awkwardness, negativity, making your whole classroom toxic, maybe even your whole school community toxic? How do you train them out in a respectful manner? So that's how I think about how I supervise my staff, is if I'm training them up or am I training them out?
I love that because you can so easily have friction between adults. And as the teacher in the classroom, we do have to work with these other adults. We are the ones in charge. We are the ones that manage the IEPs. We're the ones that put the grades in. We're the ones that do all of these things. But paraprofessionals really are, I always say paraprofessionals are the backbone of special education because we couldn't do our job without them.
Yeah.
But you're right. There are some that are fantastic and they're great and they mesh well with everyone. They love what they do. And I love how you put it. How do you train them to want to stay and want to come back and to validate their struggles and what their worries are and everything they're seeing? But then the other ones who maybe aren't cut out for this job or didn't realize everything it entails,
Yeah.
how do you respectfully train them out? So let's start with this. How do you know? And maybe this is probably like a duh Stephanie question, but how do you know which one to do, which path to take? Are there signs? Are there signals? Obviously, for both of like the outliers, the ones that are really, really good, and then the ones that just aren't that great, and that's okay. Those are obvious. But what about the middle ground ones? How do you know which path to take?
Yeah. I think of so train the ones that I really want to keep around. I always try and think about what I would want as in my supervisor. So you're talking about how do I keep the ones that are motivated and how do I know the ones that I want to keep around? How do I know who that is? You know, really it's about who my classroom teachers are reporting back with, gosh, this happened and it was so helpful because this person did this. The feedback from your gen ed teachers are amazing. They are with your paraprofessionals just as much as you are. And even I've even gotten feedback from parents. Students go home and kids bring their stuff to school and kids take their stuff from school home. So parents hear things about staff in school as well, just like we hear about what happens at home. So the feedback from parents are amazing. The feedback from your gen ed teachers are amazing. And what you as a supervisor are observing. Are they able to follow directions from a supervisor wherever they are in the school? How do they interact with students when they're in your room? How are they collecting data? Do they follow up with you? Do they ask questions? Those are the kinds of things I'm looking for for people who I want to train up. And I think of it as I'm kind of a sports nut. So I think of it as you know, a baseball or softball lineup. These middle are kind of like the top of my lineup. They still need instruction because, maybe they're still learning how to bunt, or maybe they're still learning how to bat and how to slap a ball into specific areas. And maybe that's your paraprofessional that has to train on something very specific for the student that they're serving. So they're going to want more training. They might need more observations from me as a supervisor. They might be your tier 2-ish type paraprofessional who you can let fly a little bit, but they still need some of that direction from you based on the students that they serve. So I'm still training them up because I still see potential in them, but they might just need some more practice and some more supervision and maybe some more training on your part. Now, those ones that are exceptional, you talked about those outliers, those are your big hitters. Those are your 4, 5, 6 hitters that you can just let fly and check in with you and just keep checking in and keep making sure they're validated and you're thanking them and you're giving them that, yeah, you belong here and I appreciate that you're here. I think another thing is validating those who are working hard. It's so important. I had a coworker tell me one time that it does me no good to support any sort of staff if I'm not giving consequences to the ones not doing well. And consequences can mean a variety of things. It's not necessarily a negative thing. But if I'm not also rewarding the ones who are doing good, if I'm not doing either of those, like your work environment is going to suck. It's just going to be people aren't going to be motivated to come back. And you said it. I can't do my job without my paraprofessionals. And really, they they don't get paid well. They have a tough, tough, tough job. So it's really up to you as a supervisor to build that into, gosh, okay, I I do have a tough job. My pay may not be great, but darn it, my team is awesome and they're the people that I go to work for. And the whole part of training up is how are you building that relationship with your heavy hitters, with your maybe tier 1, tier 2 people, and making them want to come back and making them feel like they are part of your team.
I love that. And it just kind of like clicked in my mind when you were talking about, what would I want in a supervisor? And so I'm sitting here thinking, well, as a teacher, what do I want in an administrator to help me be a better teacher? And so doing those things for your paraprofessionals may also be beneficial to them. Now, everyone likes different things. Like, I don't like to be micromanaged. I need all the details and I can get it done. Give me the time and I don't need you to micromanage me along each step. But other people need those check-ins, right? And those what do you call milestones? Like, I need you this by this date, this by this date. I can get it all done. I just need you to tell me when you need it, what you need, specifics, and I'm good. And so kind of checking in and getting to know your staff and knowing their personalities, where they thrive, their own learning styles, I think is part of the training up. And I do have a question for you before we go talking about what training up does look like different things that you do to train up, but then also training out. I'm curious for my own knowledge for your heavy hitters, your tier 1, tier 2, these are the exceptional, the fantastics. Do you ever have them help you with training other staff or help them with mentoring other staff? Because teachers, we have mentors in the building within the district. So I was wondering if you've ever done that. I've never done it. I've only ever had 1 or 2 paras in my classroom. So I was curious if you've ever done that and found success with that.
Absolutely, 110%. In my setting, oftentimes we share spaces. I've had to share, sped teachers are sharing all their spaces. So even a couple supervisors can be in one room, but that would mean we have 13, 15, 16 paras that we supervise. So absolutely yes to that. And what that could look like is a variety of things. I would also, when you're assigning a mentor, you be very specific on who you're assigning as a mentor and a mentee. And almost I wouldn't even alienate just a pair of people. So if I have 15 paras, somebody's partnered up with someone. So you're not alienating somebody, because people will feel that. People will absolutely feel that.
Oh, yeah.
But when you have mentors assigned, I usually start them within my own classroom, so the resource setting. And that way I can not only observe how that relationship between those two people are going before I would set them out into a gen ed classroom. I don't want to throw too much at my gen ed teachers because they have enough on their plate, and that's,
Yeah.
they don't need that stuff. So I first start that mentoring within my classroom. And it, depending on your students or how many students those two or your pairs or your threes are supporting, you can be as specific as you can or as you need for those mentors. Like if your mentees are needing specific knowledge on how to do direct instruction or how to give opportunities to respond or whatever that is in your instance, give them some guidance, give your mentor some guidance on how you would mentor that person. And it gives that experienced one some ownership of, yeah, I know what I'm doing. She's assigning me to be a mentor to somebody. So, okay, yeah. But then it also kind of helps that person who might be new or who might be training out eventually, some guidance, not just from you as the supervisor. Sometimes it's helpful and they have better. Sometimes I think our paras have better advice because I've never had to be a para. I just went into my teaching and I'm the certified teacher and I can go in and I can do my thing. But paras have such a different aspect of having so many bosses and having to juggle different structures of classrooms and all. So oftentimes they have better advice than you do. So lean on those experts, lean on your good quality people that you can trust.
They really do see all the things that we don't see. Like they, oh, like, and when I say parents are the backbone to special education, I truly mean that. They just truly, as teachers, we could not do what we do without them. They are absolutely wonderful. So let's talk about what training up looks like for you. How often are you doing these trainings? What does that look like? Fill us in on all the things.
Yeah. So those outliers, so those exceptional people that you have on your staff, I would say at least once a month. And like you said, Stephanie, I don't need to micromanage. That's not what I want I don't want that as my supervisor. If I'm being micromanaged, I feel like a child and I feel like I'm not doing my job. So those who are able to and can fly without you, a monthly check-in is, I think, sufficient enough to say, I see you, and what do you need from me? Are there things that you're experiencing with the students that you are supporting that you feel like you need training on, or if we need to come together and reflect on the processes that we're using to support them, what do you need as in this team? And sometimes that also includes your gen ed teacher. Those are your flyers. For those, those top of the lineup hitters that still need your support, every other week, I think would be sufficient enough. And it doesn't have to be a formal sit down meeting, or it could be a formal sit down meeting. If you're really needing, if you have students with specific behavior needs, how's the behavior plan intervention going? Are they making progress? What are you feeling needs to be adjusted? How are your MTSS groups going? Do you feel like you're prepared to teach those small groups? Do you feel like you're lost in this lesson? Giving them that time to give voice, I think, is important, because then it's a little easier for you to decide, okay, well, I know the curriculum that we have. I know, the resources we have for behaviors. You as a supervisor kind of know that. So it's a lot easier when you're giving feedback and getting feedback from your staff on how to help them problem solve with the resources that they need, that they're telling you they need. And gosh, if I'm that person, if I'm that staff, and if my principal comes to me and says, what do you need? And I say what I need and there's no follow-up, well, then I know for next time I don't really need to give them information, because there's not going to be any follow-up. So the follow-up piece is, I heard you, I see you, I'm finding stuff, and we're following up together, I think is huge.
I think that's huge for any meeting, not just with paraprofessionals.
Yeah.
When you're talking with parents, when you're talking with other IEP team members, what
Yeah.
do you need? How can I help? And then that's just it. Like so often, and I've been there. I've been that teacher as the new teacher, and I'm just overwhelmed with all the things. Let me help. But then I forget to follow up, or I don't follow up for like 3 weeks, and then just all the things. I think following up is huge. And another thing that I was thinking about when you were talking about doing meetings is we are in this digital age now of digital data and doing all of the things. I'm very old school. I like paper pencil. I like meetings, and I don't like staff meetings. Let me set that straight. I'd rather it be an email. But do you think there is, obviously it probably depends on the person, right? And the relationship that you have and what you're going to be talking about. But do you think there's a time and a place maybe where a Google form might be sufficient for submitting information to you? Or second question on top of that, have you ever done like an anonymous Google form where paras can leave like anonymous feedback or questions, so maybe they don't feel targeted? Not that they would be, but it just leaves that aspect out of it, like you don't know who sent it, but we want training on this, or so
Right.
and so said this, or I heard this in the staff lounge, but I don't want you to know that it came from me, kind of thing.
So to address your first question, I think like you said, I think it would depend on the type of person that you're supporting. Google form, or even text messaging, or, just a phone call on your way home,
Yeah.
when you're on your way home, because everybody's busy and life gets in the way. I think that is absolutely sufficient enough sometimes for those teachers who you're only checking in with monthly. I think you have that relationship already built with them by that time, where a quick phone call, or hey, leave me a note, or leave me some info on this Google form if you're a digital person. I think that's okay. With those who may not be in the right fit for your job, I think the face-to-face is more valuable
Yeah.
because they know that you're there to support them, and they
Yeah.
know it, not that you're watching them, but I think having the presence of you saying, I'm involved in this, we're going to work this out together, we're going to do this together, um, is important for those ones who you really need to show some love to if they're
Yeah.
not the right fit. Yeah.
That's a good
But
perspective.
no, I've never done an anonymous, but that's a really good idea because maybe I'm missing things for my staff. I'm the type of person where it's like, okay, if I need this, I don't care. I'm gonna just tell them
Same.
who they are. But
Yep.
you're right. There are people who don't like that.
Yeah.
And maybe, their affirmation is not recognition like that, but that they need. Yeah, that's a great idea.
She's like, I'm gonna write this down. We're gonna
I
start
kind
doing
of
this. I'm gonna send out this anonymous
now I'm
form.
like thinking, oh shoot, how much have I missed?
This is why collaboration is such a great
Yeah,
thing,
exactly.
because our brains all work differently. We all bring different things to the table. And so this is the perfect example of that. I love it.
And that's such a good point though too, because like you said, I'm not a person who likes micromanaging, but there are people who want list by list of like lists,
Yeah.
and there are people who just want words. There are people who like to have little gifts given
Yeah.
to them. Knowing that type of, it's helpful. It's helpful to know who your people are and what they appreciate
Yes.
from you too. Great point.
I see your brain working. I see you
Yeah.
thinking through all of this. I
Like,
love it.
oh, let's get off this call so I can go to work.
Well, let's then talk about, we've talked about training up. What does training out look like? And how do you have that conversation? When does that conversation happen? Like all of the things. I'm very
Yeah.
curious about this aspect because
Yeah.
we've all unfortunately had that para in our classroom. And that's not to say it's a bad thing. They got into this job because they wanted to help, they wanted to work with kids. But I could tell you, you don't want me as your chef. Like that is just not the job for me. If you want your food burnt or undercooked, I'm your girl. You want me to teach? I've got you. You don't want me to cook. So same goes, like not every person is meant for every job, and that's okay. So what does training out look like? How do we have this conversation? How do we do that? How do we support them through that path?
Yeah. So this starts from the day that you hire them. I really like to sit down with staff to identify and this is us doing this together live. So what are your strengths as a person, not necessarily as a teacher or paraprofessional? What strengths do you bring to the table as a team member? And I also like to say, what are ultimately your goals? What do you have as goals for yourself in whatever career? So are you wanting to be a paraprofessional because you're in college and you need an extra job? Or are you going to college and you want to work with youth and you're not sure which path you want to take, so you want experience with youth? Or are you taking this job because you're learning how to be a better chef, and that's ultimately your path that you're going to take? And all of them are fine. Even great chefs could be great staff members.
Yeah.
However, it gives you a good idea of, okay, if so and so brings these strengths and they have identified these as their strengths, you can really utilize that as you're training them out. It's really helpful to plan based on somebody's strengths versus pulling out all the negativity that they're not doing and that they're not fitting in. And, it just makes it less awkward, and it makes it less like, like this isn't working, you're out of here
Yeah.
kind of thing. So I start there. I start with their strengths, I start with their goals, and it gives you a good idea on where the future will go with this staff member, whether it's long-term or not. Training them out though, again, going back to the feedback from gen ed teachers, really the student progress, you can tell if a student is not meshing well with a staff member. parents feedback, admin feedback, PE teacher feedback, they see everybody. So having that plan and having set those expectations when they start, okay, Johnny has this on his plan. You're teaching this, and these are the directions, and it gives you kind of a roadmap of documentation for yourself. We've talked about your strengths, we've talked about your goals, we've talked about the expectations that I have for you. That gives you kind of a back way to say, okay, during our check-in, during our weekly check-in, probably, because remember, these are your bottom of the lineup people, or those tier 3 people that you need to check in with constantly, where those expectations are. Remember these expectations. I have to be able to see this, this, and this. This is what this student needs. We're here for this student. Are we doing this, this, and this? And that also gives you a way to show documentation and data for that staff member. And I know that it's like, oh, I have to take data for adults too. You do. I don't, there's no better way around it, but you also can't argue with data. So if somebody comes at you like wanting to show conflict, you have that data, you have your expectations, and you can relate to them more because you know where their path is. Remember, you said your strengths are this. I think you would be much better fitted if you were exploring this as a job opportunity, or this as some experience, on the job experience, things like that. I don't know about you, Stephanie, but in my district, we also have a very specific improvement plan. So some districts might have that, some districts might not have that. Where if I feel like this is not a good fit for my school, we can't just say, okay, you're done, you're out of here, don't show up tomorrow. There's a process where you go through and have a specific improvement plan saying, these are our expectations. This is our timeline of when we're going to check in next. And then you follow that path. But my district has that in place where I have to follow that specifically. But if you don't, you still have the tools that you need. If you identify their strengths, if you identify your expectations, and then collect data and show, gosh, these last 3 weeks, we've really been struggling with this, this, and this, but I see your strengths are pushing you to this, this, and this. Let's explore some other avenues for you to possibly join other employment. Yeah.
I think most districts have a performance. My husband works in corporate, so it's called a performance improvement plan is what I know it as. It's a PIP. And so I think most districts have it because they put teachers on them.
They should. Hopefully they do.
Yeah, so I think they do. I've never had to put a pair on a PIP, but I would imagine that they do. But back to what you were saying about following their strengths. And it got me thinking about how we write strengths-based IEPs and thinking about all of these. I'll leave a link for a blog post about how to write strengths-based IEPs here. But thinking about working with paraprofessionals, are we training them up? Are we training them out? Everything you have said has really come back to focusing on their strengths, what they're really good at. And I've never thought about it in that way. I guess I've just always like innately done it. Like, what are you really good at? I call it the zone of genius. What is your zone of genius? What are you really good at? Where do you thrive? What are you not good at? Like, please do not ask me to do a bulletin board. I will do a half job and it will stay up all year. Like, that is not my jam. I had a paraprofessional once who loved putting up bulletin boards. And so I was like, it's yours. Whatever you want to do, I will get you whatever you need. You need to print something, you just let me know. Like, she had it. Like, oh, those bulletin boards were beautiful. I never could have done it. But that was her strength. She enjoyed that. That made her feel like part of the classroom, part of the school. Like, that was one of her things that she absolutely loved. And so I love that that is all part of this conversation, is finding their strengths and building on that. And where does that lead them, essentially, I guess?
Yeah. Well, and it goes back to just do you want to go to work and do things all day that you're not good at doing? Like,
Yeah,
would you want to be a teacher and
that's
have to go
true.
to bulletin boards your whole day?
No,
Like, think about
I'm
that.
out.
Think about how you want to go to work too.
Yeah. This is a lot of like self-reflection as well as a person to be a manager. I use that word lightly, but
Yeah.
to be the team lead for your classroom, the classroom lead, it's a lot of self-reflection. Like, what do I like? What is going to benefit the classroom, but also how does each of my support staff thrive? And how
Yeah.
can I help them with that?
Yeah. And then how do you teach all your kids on top of that?
Right? There's so many layers of teaching.
Layer.
So many layers. But is it safe to say that at the beginning of the school year, all of your staff pretty much start at the same point? Now you're probably going to have some that are returning, right? And so that you know that they're going to stay for the most part, right? But it's safe to say that all staff, let's say you get all new paraprofessionals in your classroom at the beginning of the year, they all pretty much start at the same place, right? Get to know you, get to know their strengths, and then it kind of down the road you learn more about. And now everyone, why are you here? Like, are you here just while you're in college, or are you on the path to be a teacher, or is it just a job to get you by for right now? That's a little different, but is it safe to say that generally, for the most part, everybody kind of starts out at the same place?
I don't know. I
No?
feel like it's our I have a large district, so sometimes I feel like we start without all of our full staff many
Okay.
times.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good point. Okay.
So
Yeah.
maybe I feel like I don't know because a lot of times out of like 15, I'm just going to throw out some random numbers. Out of 15 paras, I would say average ish that I've had experience with, maybe half of them return.
Okay.
So, and then you're still hiring the other
Right.
remaining whoever you need. So do they all start at the same spot in August, September when you're starting school? Hopefully they are. And
Yeah.
hopefully you're building that team then and there. And then
Yeah.
you can see who from there, your newbies, you can see who and you're mentoring, like
Yeah.
we talked about here. But I don't know. Sometimes I feel like when you have a huge caseload and there's several paras that you're supporting, sometimes you're hiring still in October, November,
Yeah.
December. Sometimes you don't even get everybody filled. So I
I
don't
guess
know.
let me frame it this way. Let me do the baseball analogy. So, but everybody starts at like first.
Yeah. Yeah.
No matter when throughout the year they start, everybody truly starts by going to first
Correct.
and then
You're
second. They all don't make it home,
yes.
but we all start first, second. I guess that's what I was envisioning. But you're right.
I
Not
see.
all of our
I
staff
see.
starts at the beginning of the year. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Well, absolutely. I mean, that could go for teachers too. We're all starting at
Yeah.
first base. If we all make it home, woo, we're all gonna make it home. But that's a great point. If everybody starts with square zero and or ground zero, and we'll see from, you know, the you just really have a good gut feeling. I just can't
Yeah.
describe it because as a supervisor and the kids that you're supporting, the people who are going to be able to do it.
Yeah.
And the people who are going to make it to second and third, and you still know the people who are going to get stuck at first base.
Yeah.
So yeah, but you're absolutely right. We all start in the same spot. And I think that's also validating for those who are new because gosh, I remember, I know I can help you with that because that was a struggle that I had. Those mentors
Yeah.
can be that piece, that communication between, "Ugh, I'm experiencing this with a gen ed teacher. How did you go through this conflict?" And those mentors can be huge because not often do they want to come to their supervisor all the
Yeah.
time. And so having that mentor, just going back to that mentor, is pretty huge too in that aspect. Yeah.
Well, what is your best piece of advice for when it comes to training up or training out the staff in your classroom?
I I'm not one to avoid conflict, but I also don't want to make conflict when you don't have to. If
Yeah.
you're coming into a situation, if you are coming in and you know you're training somebody out and they're on an improvement plan, if you can approach it as, okay, we're we're not seeing the progress that we need to, but again, going back to your strengths and your own goals, but don't you feel it's because of this? And this is what I'm hearing you say. You're frustrated too because of this, this, and this. Really just having that open dialogue. And if you can avoid being combative with that person, it's going to help you so much in the transition of, yeah, I think you and I both know that this probably isn't going to be your long-term job. And I can help you. Let's find some other resources to help you find your path in another area. Because oftentimes you have to have a 2 or 3 week window until, yes, this is not the spot for you. And yes, this will be your last day. So I'm not going to go in and be attacking and aggressive and being like, I'm your boss. This is it. This is you're done, because that's just going to give you 2 or 3 weeks of student support that's going to go down the toilet because they're not going to want to be there. It's going to be awkward for your entire staff within your classroom. And the person's not going to want to do anything at all for those students because it's such a you've turned it into a toxic relationship now. So if at all you can avoid the conflict, I use that word loosely. If you can avoid the strong conflict between the two, and they're also, you get them to also think about their own path, and really this, they know that it's also not the fit for them. It really helps with the transition of, okay, we're all on the same page here. I respect that you are going to stay with us, and I respect that this isn't the spot for you. Just keeping that boundary at the top of your list is huge for me, because I don't want to build that. I'm here for the kids. You're here for the kids. And ultimately, until you step out that door for the last time, the kids really need to, your students are who you're supporting. Just because we have this conflict and just because I think this is not a good fit doesn't mean that the kids have to suffer because of it. So that's my biggest advice.
That's
That might
great
have been a wrap.
advice.
That could have been a wrapped around long
That's
answer, but conflict is hard and it's so
it is.
uncomfortable. And I don't know. It's just, I always feel like, how would I approach this? How can I approach this so I don't sound combative, but I sound purposeful and saying, this is our path. This is the end to our path together. But without just like, you know, I
Yeah.
don't just,
Twisting the knife essentially maybe is
right.
something. Yeah,
Yeah.
don't do that.
Yeah.
If you can avoid it. That's fantastic advice. And I love how you worded it. Like it's very respectful of both sides.
Mhm.
Um, that was great advice. I love that. Well, thank you so much, Lydia, for being here and just sharing more about working with paraprofessionals in the classroom and training them up or training them out and just really working with them, not against them, in all aspects, regardless if they're going to be returning next year or if they're not, or if they are your tier 1 para or the tier 3 para. It's really important to just be respectful and back to the whole like strengths based, working on their strengths and focusing on that, staying in their zone of genius. I think that that's fantastic. Well, you have more trainings for paraprofessionals and for teachers, and also a teachers pay teachers store. Can you tell us a little bit about? We have everything linked below. So your paraprofessional course is linked below, and then all of your courses are linked below in a separate link, and also your TPT store. But can you tell us a little bit more about what we can expect if we go take one of your courses or go to your TPT store?
Sure. So luckily, I was a mentor. I've been mentors for other SPED teachers, and they have really taught me what new teachers need. And so I built this course to really give those mentees that I've had some sort of direction on maybe what I've missed in college, when on the job training teaches you way more. So we go into how to schedule in multi-room. So kindergarten through 12th grade, you can schedule that huge puzzle of scheduling paras in several different grades for several different groups. I do touch base and focus a lot about strengths and staff. I also really front load with expectations and team building with your gen ed teachers, sped teachers, and your paras. So that's really heavy at the beginning of this training. And then I move into the conflict things, templates to give you scripts on, okay, if I have to approach a para for this, I have scripts that you can try and rehearse, because I feel like sometimes it helps to, okay, this is what I can say. I'm heated in the moment. I'm really upset about this, and there's conflict here, but what can I say? What can I rehearse to alleviate the negative? So there's also that in there. And then of course, behaviors, behavior. At the end of the courses, I often look for what resources can help with what specific behaviors. So, if there's elopement, if there's disengagement, if, what you bring it to the table, hopefully there is some sort of strategy or resource linked within the course, because that's what I need. I'm seeing this in my classroom. I need things I can use right now, tomorrow in my class to help this student. So that's also linked. It's a bunch. It's a lot. And it's very, my mentees have loved it, because it's like, gosh, this is what I needed. I just needed things that I can use right now. And I needed some sort of idea on how to get there. So yes, you can, those links below. The full course is called Spedivation, and it's all what we talked about today, for sure, and then some.
I love it. So I have links below. Again, Lydia's courses are linked below. Her Teachers Pay Teachers store is linked below. I also have some things linked for you, like the Intentional IEP membership, where there are over 158, I've lost count at this point, trainings, including the one that Lydia and I did on Paris in general education. You will find that inside of membership. So there's a link to check that out. I've also, you mentioned, and we talked briefly about the follow-up. So we have a meeting and then there's a follow-up. So I actually have a collaboration log, which I've used with other gen ed teachers, with other IEP team members, but you could use it with the paraprofessionals. So I'm going to link that for you. There's a blog post on para expectations and responsibilities. And then I've also linked at Mrs. D's Corner all of our paraprofessional blog posts, because there's so many. And then I have a free paraprofessional input form, which will help you with the IEP data, because they see so many things that we don't. Their input is so valuable for IEPs. And then the paraprofessional interest survey, that's also freebie. So I've linked that below too. But again, thank you so much, Lydia, for being here and just sharing your knowledge and expertise with all of us. Thank you so much for being here to learn more about training your paras, focusing on their strengths, and learning how to train them up or train them out. Again, my name is Stephanie. I'm so happy that you've been here. If you need anything from Lydia or I, please feel free to reach out. We are always here to help you in your position, working with students and working with the paraprofessionals in your classroom. And we will see you in the next training.